Welcome back, guys, to the podcast from the Betartians. This week, we're actually going to be diving into a new subject, as we have all other weeks. That was a really terrible intro. I am joined back, thanks to my lovely guests. I'm joined with Daddy Mothmaster, aka Alfie, aka Legion.
Yo.
Alex, aka Obscuricon, aka Aspen.
Hi.
And Sam, aka Sam, aka Sam.
AKA Sam.
AKA
Also
Sam.
AKA hello.
Hello. Yes, as we go through every single week, we usually talk about a power, usually discussion of some sort. Explaining different tropes, bits and pieces from each and every individual thing that we can think of that are either inside of the Animite Tales tabletop RPG, or at least a game, or even a film, show, or even just any kind of like fiction. And today we're going to be talking about a new subject, species physiology. However, before we actually get into that, I actually want to talk about last week. So last week, obviously, we talked about telepathy, and we talked about a few bits and pieces like mind control. Last week, I'm pretty sure we spoke about different characters like Jean Grey from the X-Men, obviously, I can't even remember his name now, Xavier.
Professor X.
Yes, Professor X, Charles Xavier, also from the X-Men. A few other different, obviously, a few other different telepaths, but one particular one that actually escaped your mind, Alfie. I think you wanted to talk about him just briefly.
Yes. One of my favorite characters in manga and anime at the moment is Hitoshi Shinzo from My Hero Academia. He actually does brainwashing as his quirk, just by speaking to people. Basically, if he speaks to someone and they like respond, even if it's kind of within themselves respond, he can take control of their mind. I've always thought that's a really cool power to have, or like a really cool sort of take on brainwashing, and it's used quite effectively during the I think it's one of the more recent arcs in My Hero. I think when Shinzo like comes back.
Yes, it's
quite
quite a special ability. If anyone actually thinks about mind control, they usually think of, oh, it's mind control. They just use their mind to control someone. Where it's like, however, with a special knack, like a special ability like that, where it's like, if I talk to you and you respond in any vocalization, then immediately you become brainwashed. I think that's a really cool ability, and I'm actually going to be going into something similar to that in a couple of weeks' time with another subject, because when we swing back around to me, I'll be going into a special thing. Basically, I can't remember, I think it was like trap special abilities, like basically abilities that activate based on a requirement, but I'm going to go on to that later. An announcement for next week, actually, we'll be talking with Des from one of the YouTube channels, the 12D20. I actually used to do some podcasts with her, and she'll be coming on to do. I'm just now having a look. Oh yeah, positives, psychological positives of tabletop RPGs and or roleplay games. So basically, just like what kind of positives that you actually get from playing them, being a part of them, doing anything for them, like writing stories for them, etc., etc. That's what we'll be going into, and Des will basically be the leader of that subject. We actually didn't get that many questions last time, nor do we actually have any feedback from last times. One, because most people that I spoke to actually kind of covered the things, except from one, and it was we've seen like how widespread it is, but I think someone was saying, obviously they're like really powerful, they're really dangerous. The fact that they can create illusions is one thing. But different types of telepathy, like I think it was like someone went on the concept of how was it? Technically, telepathy can be used for almost any types of creatures, but what if telepathy actually was used in different ways and different senses? And I said, obviously, a wacky, weird one would have been pyropathy, the concept of you can make people believe they're on fire. Or make them believe
evil.
They're not on
So
fire.
evil.
Yeah.
I love it. I don't. I'm just gonna say that right now. I love that. That is just. Yeah, I know how like in the compendium kind of thing, like oh, something can be used for good or evil. I don't think that there's any way that can be used in a not chaotic way, and I kind of love it.
I think one of my favourite things about it is, though, we technically do have a perk on pyrokinesis for it called Heat Sense, which allows the user to telepathically know if like about heat signatures, but also can sense fire within a massive radius. So it's kind of like an interesting thing of like they're telepathically connected to any kind of heat or fire. But yeah, no, nothing that allows them to like make people believe they're on fire. But I guess that could be like with illusions or with telepathy in on itself. To be fair.
Can I ask? Could you then say that Chaos from Code Chaos is also a type of telepathy? Because as we've seen, even Lush has the ability, of course, to look at someone and command them. But as we've seen, there's different types of Chaos, like the King, who can remove memories by looking at people.
That's actually a perk that we have as well. I actually based that off of something similar because I think it was like Xavier has it and also Charles. I based it off of. Oh wow, they're both named Charles. Gias. Yeah, no, Gias is really good.
Or the fake brother, who has the ability just to stop people.
Yes, mind freeze. Basically, like it makes people. It makes people like all of their functions shut down except from their usual ones. So it's like their minds just don't record information. Because apparently, like, if you're too tired or if you're too drunk or too inebriated, the way that it works is you don't forget the memory. Your brain cannot record the information. It cannot hold on to it. So therefore, it's like basically Rallo just makes them suddenly stop remembering situations, and it just shuts down their sort of inner thoughts. So that then, like, for them, it's like time has stopped. But actually, the truth of the matter is that they're just not able to move or do or say anything. And then when time resumes for them, or when the ability stops, their brain doesn't record any of the information that happened to them or around them.
Kind of like when you're drunk. When you get past a certain level of inebriation, your brain just forgets to record.
I mean, are you drunk and or tired? Because I literally just said that.
I was wondering there, was that supposed to be
Was
the
that
thing
on purpose?
The GR Alpha? Speaking of, did you know when you're drunk, sometimes, if you drink enough, you don't actually record memories?
No, I heard something about that too, to be honest.
It's almost like you're drunk.
We here at the Betartians don't actually recommend that you drink enough to not remember. We don't condone heavy drinking.
As fun as it sounds, it's not that fun in reality.
This is a Christian Discord.
It is.
I mean,
We'll have none of that here.
A straight edge podcast.
Straight edge, at least straight edge. Anyway, so
Will someone please think of the children.
So we're gonna move on very swiftly before we actually start getting into the into certain things. So this week we're actually talking about Sam. Take it away.
Well, this week, we're going to be talking about speedsters and speedster physiology.
Yay!
Indeed. Which allows Joe to, of course, make all the references he does love.
I do love the references.
Well, speedster physiology is the ability to gotta go fast. So people can move faster, they can run further away, they can manipulate their body to make, like, vibrational forces. So they can run across water, run across walls, run through items if they move at the correct vibrational frequency, and of course hit a lot harder, because if you hit something with a lot of momentum, believe it or not, that'll hurt a lot, as we've seen with bullets.
Yes, as we have seen with bullets. If you throw a bullet, it doesn't really hurt, but if it's fired out of a gun, or even if you use a piece of metal from a ball bearing out of a slingshot, it hurts a lot more than you can usually throw.
I was thinking more, imagine a fist-sized bullet coming at you at the same velocity. That's going to hurt.
Oh,
It's like Ant-Man, I guess.
It's going to hurt a hell of a
well.
lot.
What is it like, what if a speedster throws a bullet? I mean, would that have the same velocity as a gun, or was it... I mean, I guess it depends on their powers.
It really depends. I mean, technically, actually, no, okay. Remove the word throwing and actually just have it that, like, a person holds a ball bearing in their hand, they run at 600 and something miles per hour, holding the pellet, and then just as they're stopped before their target, they let go of the bullet, and they're still moving all of this speed. They then just slightly press it forward and then run back at like 1200 miles per hour, stop exactly where they were, and basically it gives the illusion that they threw it at the same velocity as a bullet was being shot. Like, that's some of the weird, tricky things you could do if you had the ability of super speed. I mean, yeah, I'm already bringing out my inner nerd here, or even my outer nerd, my true nerd, because I love speedster physiology. Just manipulation of momentum, movement, and speed is just... Oh, it's so cool. So I'm going to let other people talk, as obviously we have examples. So, Sam, I'm going to let you take that away, and then I will chime in at the end.
Okay, I was debating talking about weaknesses, but I think we'll leave that for later on, actually. Say, how about Alfie? Do you have any great examples of speedsters?
I have.
Do you want to talk to us about?
I have a rather strange example from real life that I'm going to drop in the Discord. Now. It is a animal known as a common basilisk lizard, otherwise referred to as a Jesus Christ lizard, as it can actually run so fast that it can run on water. Also, its feet are kind of designed so that they're quite splayed, so it can kind of distribute its weight. But it'll literally run away from predators over the surface of a lake.
Okay, that is cool.
That is
really
pretty
cool.
nifty.
Yeah, no, it's really cool.
admit.
I've seen, a lot of animal sort of shows and documentaries there, but that's the first one that really sprung to mind. Although going back to what you mentioned as well with the ball bearing, I think like it'd be more damaging than if it was to be fired from a gun. Because I mean, a gun kind of has a cap on how fast a bullet can travel, or within a certain ballpark, depending upon like the caliber and the gun. But if you're a speedster, depending on how fast you can run, you could pretty much atomize a person, or if you do it so fast, you can basically create like a singularity, like a black hole within somebody by running that fast.
I mean, it really depends. I mean, actually, weirdly enough, Bill and I were actually talking about this. Like, if a speedster could run, I think it was like, if a speedster can run at the speed of light, at that point they would potentially either make a black hole the second that they hit something, or it was something like their footsteps would literally shatter apart the continent that they're standing on, because moving at that speed would mean that their feet would at least be moving at like at least either a 9/10 of the maximum speed or the whole speed. Imagine a foot hitting concrete at the speed of light, because usually things that move at the speed of light are massless, hence light. Light is massless, if no one actually knew that. those who are watching, that's a nice little bit of science there for you. But yeah, no, to be honest, yeah, it's just the fact that imagine your foot, all of your weight, all of your strength, adding that mass and hitting or at least touching concrete at the speed of light. It would just shatter it apart, like as if it was nothing. And you're absolutely right. It would just, the thing that you would touch would just be atomized at a right enough speed. Like, I think it's like most bullets go between anywhere between like 600, 700 miles per hour. I think there's obviously high velocity bullets that go faster than that, but nothing that could probably go anywhere near the speed of light, because I mean the speed of light is ridiculous. I will actually try and get up some statistics of that whilst you guys are chatting, but yeah. Like,
I mean, I don't think bullets even go... Do they go at the speed of sound?
They do break the sound barrier, I think, when they're being fired out of the gun. Some of them. I don't think all of them, because
think about this, is that even then, the momentum, even if it's a very close distance, the momentum will fall, admittedly not very quickly, but it will slow down slightly in the air.
Yeah.
Imagine imagine your example where you're literally pressing the bullet into someone with that speed. without momentum stopping, essentially, because you're shoving it in there.
They go 2,500 feet per second. That's the average bullet speed, which is around apparently 1,700 miles per hour. That's apparently they're the average move speed. That's what it says anyway, which is crazy. But yes, no, that's apparently, according to Google, that's the average bullet speed.
Don't quote us on this.
Now, don't quote us on this.
They are not
So
physical.
whenever you want to know about bullets with Speedsters, talk to us.
Don't try this at home, kids.
Don't try
Indeed.
maths at home.
See, what we're saying is don't run at someone with a bullet in your hand and try and shove it through their head. That's a no-no.
Yeah, that's a
Bad thing to do.
Even if you have super speed, if anyone is out there listening and you are somehow got super speed, I mean, definitely run around the world and see how fast you can go. But before then, make sure that you don't shove things into people at high speeds or at all. Actually, that's kind of rude.
I mean, that's just a good piece of advice for anyone, really.
Yeah.
That's what I'm just going to put on the quote for the tag of this. Don't shove things into people
At high
At
speed.
at high speeds. Specifically at high speeds. In fact, anything
Must
at all.
suppress
Or
jokes.
at least check with them first.
Yeah.
Anyway, to get off of this one, to make it more child-friendly, as is the show, maybe we should go into a slightly different discussion then. Because I know, Joe, I know you desperately want to tell us about your examples of Speedster.
Move on.
Oh,
Let's speed
you're
away
saying
from
you
that.
don't want to?
No, I'm saying definitely let Alex have a go first.
Okay. Oh yeah, because I know
I'm
you
not-
will take this time up. We only have an hour, after all.
Well, this
Alex,
is
do
a...
you want to tell us some then?
well, not really. Well, this is the thing. I have a confession to make. Speedster, while it is Joe's favorite superpower, I'm actually not too keen on Speedster myself. Like, I'm not. I've never been that. Like the Speedsters I actually like. I don't really care too much about their powers. It's more their personality that I like. I mean, I like the Flash because he treats his villains pretty nicely. He's always quite fair and he's sweet and he's funny. And I'm just thinking about Speedsters generally. Like a lot of Speedsters are just generally in fiction just nice. Just kind of a weird thing that I'm talking about. Like they're nice people usually, or they're snarky and like literally quick-witted, which I don't know if that's intentional or not. Like they have their powers are quick and they themselves have quick minds and quick-witted. Like the only dour speedster I can think of is some iterations of Quicksilver, and I don't care about those. Like I like my snarky Quicksilver. I like my I like snarky Quicksilver. I like I'm brilliant at everything. Screw you, Quicksilver. I don't like my tortured soul. Quicksilver. I don't know. I just thought that that's kind of a weird thing. Why do people think that is, or is it just all coincidence?
I think it depends on the character more so than the power. I mean, with that, it's the same sort of thing as if like Rorschach had super speed. It'd probably still be just as dour. It'd just do it
Yeah.
faster.
I know,
I
but
would
it just
say-
seems weird thinking about it. Like that's never really happened. People just
I was
can't really
thinking-
imagine it.
Maybe it's one of those kind of stereotypes, like all necromancers are, are all going to be liches that have deep voices and great, majestic plans of evil.
And all speedsters are
speedsters, therefore,
quick-witted.
Are quick-witted, funny, and
mostly
generally
cocky.
likable.
Yeah, although to be fair, I actually wanted to get into something about that. Barry Allen, he is not super cocky, and even before Barry Allen, there was also Jay Garrick. Jay Garrick was actually quite more conformed. No, not conformed. Sorry, reformed. Like he was reserved. That's it. He was quite excitable, but he was still sort of like reserved in his own personality. Barry Allen, on the other hand, is more serious. He can have that lighthearted thing of being like younger than most of the Justice League, despite the fact that he is not the youngest member of the Justice League, and well, unless if you count Shazam, depending on which iteration. But either way, like usually most of the time Barry Allen, and also usually Wally West is usually the youngest member of the Justice League, and it shows because of his level of experience usually is only towards saving his city rather than defeating cosmic threats, until obviously you get into the later comics when you actually find out that the source of his powers is pretty much a cosmic entity or even like a cosmic force.
It's just an added irony to his character that's laid on. It's like, you think that speedster physiology is very sort of like literally grounded, like you are running on the ground and doing things on the ground, and it's like, oh, actually, it's expanded into the entire universe, and oh, it's connected to this speed force.
Mm.
You know, that's like just bigger than anything that, you know, a human mind could possibly imagine. And
Which-
it's like, oh, dang.
I do have to say, I will say this because I will go into my example in a second. I love the Flash. Like, the Flash is one of my favorite characters in DC, and in comic history. To be honest, I just love the Flash. For those of you who don't know, somehow, the Flash is actually a comic book character from the DC comics, the same place where Batman and Superman comes from. And basically he has the ability to run very fast. But actually, the truth of the matter is that although he is a speedster, although he has his main power is super speed, he actually has this field, this energy source that he can actually generate, or depending on which variant of these speedsters who have this power, they actually, like, whilst they're running, they generate it, or even whilst they run, like, they actually tap into it. To increase their capability of running, and you know, it's just this powerful energy source that allows them to increase their speed, momentum, etc. However, now I love this thing. I love the whole concept of it. It's like a special cosmic force that transcends all of time and space, because basically it's literally a force based around a concept. However, the naming of it is not great. I love the Flash, but Speed Force, when explaining it to someone who's not a comic reader, sometimes it does sound really... I don't know. It's
Very goofy.
Goofy.
Sort of, yeah.
Yes.
Well, one has to.
Absolutely.
But this thing goes was that one has to quit for that, because that was back in like the golden era of comics, or not? It's not the golden, the silver era, where things like that were more acceptable. Like, let's be honest, the name is a bit silly. Captain Cold is a bit silly, but we accept that because that's just what they're named.
Hang on a second. Are those wheels on Jay Garrick's shoes?
What?
Is he wearing
Wait,
wheelies?
what?
He's
Wait,
wearing
wait,
roller
wheelies?
skates.
Oh,
Oh, it's
does
roller skates! Yay!
does-
Oh, I love the
because he
boardies.
wears roller
I love the
skates,
boardies.
Does this
I don't
mean that
think
the
he does.
Flash mythos is a direct one-for-one trade-up of the Sonic the Hedgehog mythos with Jay as Shadow?
Nah.
Anyway,
An example that I actually do have, though, is this guy. I'll put him in now. This guy from The Flash, one of the most recent
course.
villains / characters, Godspeed. Now, the reason why I like him is actually also another reason why we're going to go into a second subject, and he's kind of the reason of our segue, because obviously why it was chosen. Now, personally, why I like this subject, I don't know if this is why you chose it, Sam, but why I like this subject is because that any kind of speedster can be interesting. Like, Godspeed himself has a couple of different abilities that are kind of interesting. Like, for instance, he can steal the speed and momentum from other beings and therefore make himself more powerful. He also has the ability to basically vibrate at a certain frequency that he can do a mitosis, where he can literally split himself into two. And then he's like, he can be in two places at once. He can literally, he's just two people. The only problem is that, like, his atoms, whilst doing so, are a little bit more unstable, therefore, like, the bodies are physically a little weaker. And I love Godspeed. There's so many different things about it, but I actually have to agree with Alex on this one. The reason why I like Godspeed is not his powers, it's actually his character. He's not a straight up villain. He actually becomes more of a villainous... He's kind of like an anti-hero / an anti-villain. Like, he does bad things, but he tries to do them for the good reasons. Ultimately, though, he still does bad things, but he kind of is still a villain in certain aspects, but he believes himself to be a hero. Whereas, like, usually anti-heroes don't really care whether or not they are or aren't heroes or villains. They just do things usually as an antagonist would, but does them in sort of questionable means. Which is why most people consider, like, whether or not Batman is or isn't an anti-hero. And to some degree, he is / isn't. Like, it depends on which iteration and which comic. But why I like this and why I wanted to say this before we go into why you chose it is because why I personally love this one is because of the sheer scale, and I this is going to sound super nerdy, the mathematics and physics behind it. Because if you think about, as we said, with the speed of light, with the speed of sound, the sheer scale of maths involved with, like, oh, a speedster, yeah, you can run 12,000 miles. What does that mean to you? Like, in all honesty, like, 12,000 miles, 5,000 miles, stuff like that, that's insane. Like, the speed value? Like, if anything moves at that speed, what kind of pressure that it would create? What kind of sort of reactions would happen after something moves past anything at speeds past 600 miles or even further than that? And as we said, like, if something moved at the speed of light that had mass, it could destroy anything, if not the planet, because to be honest, we've never actually really... I mean, I think it's like, you know, the calculation of like a meteorite would only have to fall from Earth and have like escape or terminal velocity or something to basically wipe us all out. That's not the speed of light. If it moved at the speed of light, we would the planet would just not exist anymore.
Even if like a speedster ran around the planet, as Flash has been shown to do, or a lot of these characters have been shown to do, just the force of them running around the planet, not even at the speed of light, would like turn the Earth back, or at least stop its or slow down its rotation.
It
And would
really
just mean that
depends.
everything on the planet would basically just fly off.
I think you've been watching way too much Superman the movie, Alfie.
Maybe this is why I'm not a fan of speedster physiology, because I hate maths and
You
just
do
make my
hate
brain
maths.
hurt.
You do hate maths. That actually is a good point. That's fair enough. However, that brings us into our next part of the topic, is why it was chosen Sam. So why did you choose it?
By the way, I should say you were correct to say that Alex should have gone first before you did. And by the way, because I didn't give an example, and I would feel bad if I didn't, because
No,
I have
don't
made a reference so far each week to some Greek related mythology. There's, of course, probably the first speedster, I would say. It could be wrong here, but Hermes, the messenger of the gods, of course, who was able to move throughout the realms with great speed and deliver messages from any of the gods.
You know what I love about that the most is that, you know, the first speedster is a delivery boy.
Exactly.
Like
That
that's
makes
nothing
sense.
expense. Yeah.
And as we can see from his appearance, his costume, he has quite a lot of the speedsters that we see now. They have taken elements of it, like Jay Garrick's helmet.
Yes, like the wings and the lightning bolts. Like, you know, like he's got wings on his shoes and on his feet and on his helmet.
And even following Flashes with their somewhat kind of like feathers over their ears.
They usually
it's
have like lightning bolts,
but
they are exactly derived from that. Absolutely.
Exactly.
Also, the kind of the live muscular sort of build, like they're actually built like super runners, you know, like the whole Olympian sort of thing going on there. Like
The classic look.
I don't know.
Yeah, the classic
the
look.
the 2000 and the 90s sort of Flashes look like they're like beefcake McGee's, but and also the 60s, like he's just like a massive sort of slab. But all of the others sort of like have roughly sort of runnerish bodies, like more thin and more, I'd say more modest builds rather than like absolute ridiculous beefcake. I mean, like the proportions on the 2000 ones are kind of scary. But yeah, that's the whole point. Like, you know, speedsters are to do with speed. You know, whether or not it's their physiology or if it is a certain force that gives them super speed. Their bodies don't necessarily need to be massive slabs of beef to actually be that much. But anyway, go on, Sam. Continue.
And one last reference because of anime, I decided to make Speedo Sound Sonic from One Punch Man.
Ooh, yes, Speedo Sound Sonic.
Who, as we've seen, is able to move incredibly quickly.
Yes, from
He's able
One
to
Punch
move.
Man. Yeah.
Indeed.
And also the other Sonic. Don't forget that.
Oh, you mean... I don't know what Sonic you're talking about.
Sonic.
That is a difficult one.
Oh,
Sonic.
Sonic the True?
I think
It's from a very obscure anime.
I think it's Sonic the Dog. I'm pretty sure. I'm not. I can't be wrong about this. I'm pretty sure Sonic the Dog. Yeah. Oh no. You're thinking of so you're thinking of Sonric, the Hedgerund. That's it. That's it. Yeah, Sonric
that's
the
what you're talking
Hedgerund.
about.
Yes.
Oh, I think you mean Sonic the Hench Frog.
Ah, yes, the Hench Frog. Ah, yes. Who could forget Sonic the Hedge Frog?
I'm pretty sure that was the
Sonic.
original version of the movie, surely. Wasn't he the hench frog?
Sonic,
But yes,
you
if-
can really hop.
if
Should
no-
Especially
Sonic.
if
those
no
In
one
any case,
if no one realised what we're
Why
trying to
I
ham
chose
fist
this.
into it. Go
the
on,
reason
go
I
on,
chose
Sam.
this was because there is many things you can do with speedster physiology besides the basic I'm going to run and punch you. Because as we've seen with speedsters in comics, when they when they try and use them creatively, like you've got Quicksilver learning all of Beethoven in an afternoon.
Yes, yes,
Oh, yeah.
that's one of my favorite ones.
Or I'm not trying to think of an example now because there's plenty of other ones. Of course, there's like the Flash using that computer that's powered by the mind because he's got a great capacity now for thinking quickly.
Oh
because of his
yes,
speedster
I'm
physiology.
thinking. I think the panel is literally just him saying "I'm thinking" or something like that. But yes, no, absolutely,
Exactly.
I love that.
But there is plenty of things you can do with speedster physiology that doesn't even necessarily require movement of the feet.
Pretty
But
sure
there's things you
Superman
could
does
do.
something similar to
Like
that.
you
where
could, even with the ability to to vibrate through, like say people's bodies, you could remove tumors. You could help someone remove various bad things inside a body.
Which I always thought is dubious because really the science behind that almost scans. If you're able to move your body, if you're able to vibrate move your hand back and forth until eventually it starts vibrating at the frequency of sound or air, that means that technically it can pass through. Because obviously, if you think about it, a sound that is loud enough or has a good enough frequency can pass through walls even if it sounds a bit muffled, which basically means that if you were to make yourself translate into the same frequency of sound, you can pass through almost any single object, which basically is kind of weird when it's like you could remove parts of a certain person's body because you wouldn't, when you touch them and turn that, I mean, I guess it would be really super good control over that power then, like only vibrating that one tumor and then pulling it out slowly. I guess it would really have to be a very specific, precise thing. It really
Much
depends.
like Alex, I don't like math.
Yeah.
So I just kind of assume it's the same way it's the same way they can move really fast, even though technically speaking they shouldn't be able to breathe at that velocity.
Yes.
We just kind of accept these are the physical properties that they have been able to imbue in the universe. Physics are kind of broken by them, and we just kind of accept that.
and that's okay.
And that's
exactly.
fine.
How can people emit light from their hand? Where does that come from? We accept that as an as a superpower. As something they
Magnets.
have the
How do
ability
they
to
work?
perform.
Wonderful fact.
Indeed. Magnets? What's a magnet?
So I guess the next, I guess the next part of this, before we continue on as to the very deep lore and math of Speedsters. Again, sorry if everyone doesn't really like this episode just because of the math, but I think one of the best things about Speedsters is that yes, you're absolutely right. So that it's just like Super Strength and Super Charisma. It is some of the earliest ability, because like Hermes, if not further back, there might have been someone further before Hermes, like the legends of people who could run so fast that they could deliver messages or even bring things to someone so quickly and then go back. Imagine being able to get all of your chores done in a second. Like, imagine being able to be so fast that everything in the day can be done so quickly that you have the rest of the day to be. It's that really weird thing. 1 hour of hard work for 23 hours worth of lazing around.
I have an idea about the thing we talked about earlier, like with the personality of speedsters. I mean, when you'd say that like this wish fulfillment of like what would you do if you were a speedster? Imagine if you could do all these things. These are all like things that help you or help other people, like delivering messages, getting jobs done, doing complex things there. It's not really, we don't instantly think of offensive capabilities like we do with strength or even with telepathy or telekinesis. We're thinking this is, how we're benefiting society if we were just a bit faster. And I don't know, that's just something kind of neat I didn't really consider until just now.
One of my favourite things about speedster physiology is when I first spoke to someone, they said, "Oh, that's just running really fast." I was like, "Ha ha ha! You are wrong, sir." One of my best mates said to me, like, "Oh, well, the Flash is just a really boring character. All he can do is run really fast." It's like, yeah, that's what the shows want you to believe. But watch like, I think it's like the Flashpoint Paradox movie, or read some of the comics, or even watch the Flash TV show, and it shows you some of the more strange and intricate abilities that he can actually accomplish. Like, as I said, vibrating through walls, At one point, like, he creates enough friction so that he actually generates enough body heat to keep him warm during, like, certain moments of cold. And even, like the ability to just run so fast that, like, he actually has, like, bullet time, kind of like the whole Neo moment in The Matrix. But here's a question for all of you. What questions do you have
in
for
the Justice
Sam?
League as well.
Going for someone else. Sam
One
has
last
a
thing as
question
well,
for Sam.
In the Justice League cartoon, he was able to, when he was fighting Lex Luthor that was mixed with Brainiac,
Yes.
he's able to separate the two constituencies out using his vibrational forces.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he was able to figure out the two different frequencies, and again, more physics and math. So,
Exactly.
again, sorry.
In any
everyone.
case, yes. What questions do you have for me, Alex?
What would you do if you had super speed? You haven't actually made a speedster character, but like, what would your what would your speedster character be?
Well, my speedster character would be a scientist of some sort, either a specialist or a chemical specialist, because if you can move real life, I know how to speed up reaction. Using the speed, I can slow it down, like slow down surgery to the point that I can just do it within a few seconds without this being more dangerous than it is.
Well, hold on a minute. You could split an atom.
Indeed. I don't think
Damn.
using this system, at least, without some unique attributes shoved in, that I could split the atom with the speed I'm giving. But yes, I suppose if I so chose, I could split the atom and cause the end of the world.
It would honestly really depend what you want to do with your powers, isn't it? Although the problem is with super speed is if you did a surgery at like 1,000 miles per hour, you just mulch someone. Like it's like, hang on a second,
yeah.
I'm now going to remove the heart, and oh, it's gone. And so is the rest of the table, and so is the rest of the room.
No,
I know I
thing
shouldn't
is,
have
though,
moved at the speed of
it's not
sound.
thing is, though, as well, is it's not as if you'd be in control of it. It's not as if you're like doing it without the speed of you being able to think it. So you'd be doing it slowly, and in your vision, it'd be slow. In reality, it'd be going quite quickly.
Yeah,
It would actually
yes,
be
but like as in, like,
vivisecting someone.
but it's more like because obviously with the problem of super speed is if you're moving too fast, because it's the same thing of like you might be moving fast and it's absolutely fine for you, but the let's say the victim, let's say the patient you're operating on, imagine you're cutting into them with a scalpel. If you stab into them, cut through them, etc., at the speed of like, let's say like 100 miles per hour or something, that would actually tear a person apart. Like that, just even a small, because it's confirmed that a small razor blade, if it is shot at you at even 100 miles per hour, it could do a decent amount of damage to you. And it's like, yeah, for you, it's fine, it's normal movement, but for the person, it could be literally the worst case scenario.
Well, I mean, you would be doing product.
I think you just cut out there, mate.
In any case, physics is something I'm not good at. That's what I'm
be able
good
to invent
at.
something.
To answer
with
your
momentum
question,
kind of
Alex.
thing.
That's either a chemist or or some kind of medicine person. What about you, Alpha? Do you have any questions for me on Speedster?
I think, using the same sort of tech that make sort of Flash's suit. I'm not too sure, to be honest, because I haven't really read up too much from the Flash.
Gasp!
In a long old time, I must say. Everything I kind of know about him is through other characters within DC and how his relation to them. But as far as I understand it, he's got like a sort of like momentum cancelling suit, hasn't he? That allows him to sort of travel at his speeds without basically just the friction burning himself.
Oh yeah. It's
pretty much he's got a
friction-proof.
frictionless suit, so it's so pretty much whenever the air just kind of courses past him as opposed to stopping at him. Again, I don't think that's how that would work, but considering they've got high technology, it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's
it's not.
frictionless suit.
I don't know if it's
not
necessarily
chafing.
wind resistant, but I think it's something supposed to be.
I know it's like entirely resistant to all kinds of friction. It's the same way his shoes, whenever he touches the ground, they don't like
Dissipate.
slide. They don't.
Yeah.
They don't slide, and they don't like get on fire. Well, I mean, except for those surfaces that are frozen or.
Surely in that case, then wouldn't you be able to make some kind of like frictionless or momentum cancelling medical equipment that you can then use? So I mean, I was thinking actually, building on what you said about like committing surgeries and things like that. Like, notice how I said committing there is that it is technically like a victim if you do just completely operate during it. But if you commit a surgical act on a person at that speed with like momentum cancelling sort of equipment there, should it be so clean because you'd be able to perform a heart transplant in about like 0.5 of a second without any blood whatsoever escaping the body. You'd just be able to like take the old heart out, put a new one in, like mid heartbeat basically, and then essentially you could use your vibrations to get the heart starting again, like vibrate it with pulses of like speed, energy, or.
That is brilliant. I hadn't actually thought of that.
you could
Making special technology to account for the vibrational difference.
Yeah, you could do one that like counter vibrates to you at a certain like rate, so that like when you do need to.
It would definitely be going into almost the magical / sci-fi sort of expansion, but it would be really interesting to have like a technology that moves as fast as you do as a speedster, or being a speedster and having technology that moves very fast, or even, you know, having the ability to move very fast to do certain tasks. Like as he said, like I definitely know where you came from, Sam. It's just that like that's the one problem with speedster physiology is physics always gets in the way.
But not in the imagination of the comic.
We just forget about physics. Physics is for other people that aren't speedsters, as we accept that. The same way they don't just, as we said, like stop breathing whenever they reach a certain speed.
Or like their muscles
their bones
don't
don't
like
break.
their muscles don't fly off their bones because they're going too fast.
hit a wind barrier so hard that it's like hitting a solid wall.
Yeah, surely you'd make up a sonic boom every time you moved and deafen everyone around you, like if you were running that fast.
Actually, there is actually a part of that in the comics with Flash where he actually gets like I think he gets the, again, super bad naming here, negative speed force infesting inside of him, and he becomes the negative Flash. Again, not great with the naming department, but at one point, like, he uses his speed force without control, and when he does so, he creates a sonic boom that actually hurts people's ears and shatters windows, breaking cars, annihilating roads anywhere and everywhere he goes and runs.
Jeez. I was thinking as well, like he could use, I mean, bringing it back to sort of my area of expertise there in terms of speedster physiology there. Silver Chariot from JoJo is essentially a user of some form of speed there, in that when he kind of gets rid of his armor outer layer, he can essentially make duplicates of himself by traveling so quickly over a short space of time. Surely that would be really handy to do as well. I mean, I would probably, if I was making a physiology user, I'll probably make some kind of power armored suit or tech that can move and like keep up with me.
Like Savitar from the CW.
Basically like Savitar, yes, but I would use it as like an extension of myself, or like kind of a duplicate almost, because I could essentially use the suit and then get out of the suit, run around, do whatever I need to do, with a person who's fighting the suit, like their perception just being like, something's just happened behind me. It's because I'm moving faster than their brain can even process. So it's almost like they're fighting the suit and also me at the same time, kind of out of the suit.
Yeah. I mean, that would be really cool. I think that would be brilliant.
Like an easy, like kind of a quick sort of like ejector function on the suit, so you can just eject yourself out at like the speed of light, run around behind them, do loads of things, and then get back in the suit within the space of like 0.1 of a second.
Yeah.
That'd be really...
No, I think it's fair enough. It's always incredible to see when people try and put a unique touch on speedsters on any kind of power, but there's always that one character who has to figure a way to make the one weakness or the one major downside or the one conceived downside to a power and basically add something to it to make it seem like as if it's much more annoying to deal with. Like, for instance, with Speedsters, their power isn't super strength. So what do? They make a character who has a power armor that gives them enhanced strength, physical attributes, and also is bulletproof. This is Savitar in the CW Flash show, and it is great. It's in season 3. He's a really cool villain, but it's the power armor is so cool. But it's just that thing of like, damn it, that is literally just like, well, what's your weakness? Oh, well, I'm a normal sort of human outside of being able to run really fast. Cool, put you in a metal suit.
In any case,
that's something what I would do. To be honest, if I was making a speedster, it's like, okay, no weaknesses.
No
I cannot die.
Weaknesses.
I mean,
you have seen me, I do try to remove all weaknesses from characters.
Do you, Sam? I don't think I've remembered you ever doing that. But
indeed. In any case, do you have a question for me? We got a bit off topic. with more great examples of speedsters.
Oh yeah. I was gonna say, like, in terms of speedster physiology, there, would you not also be able to use that to travel back and forth in time? Wouldn't that also be a thing that you can do?
Not as the way the rules are written necessarily in this game. You can get talking with your GM, your game master. You could maybe get a unique attribute, like the Speed Force is the thing that's powering you, where you could use that to break the laws of physics and potentially time travel. But the way the rules are written at the moment, no, you can't. It's a bit like you're Quicksilver. You're not the Flash. You can move fast. You can do all these other things, but you cannot break physics in that regard, at least.
Yeah. I guess then in that case, then it would be like a nat 20. If you did have that, would just mean that you appear exactly when and where you want to. Whereas a nat 1 would be like, oh yeah, you've overshot it by a couple of billion years, and now you're in the future when the Earth is basically a barren wasteland, or you're back in time at the time when there's no living life on land.
I mean, if you're going to do a natural 1 for time travel, I would probably say you'd be probably dead because you'd have spread out yourself over like your head would be in the year 1000 BC. Your right hand would be in the year 7208. You'd just be spread out throughout time and space. Because time travel, as we discovered through various forms of fiction, is quite temperamental.
It is. I mean, it really depends on what fiction that you're going for, but even shows where they're like complete like veterans with it, even then they can't control it. It's because it's like, yeah, we can move through it, but we can't necessarily always control it. Even people who can control time can't always, weirdly enough, control it. I don't think we've really ever had someone who could just easily do it with no downsides or side effects, because the whole point of messing with time is everything is a side effect of time.
Exactly. It's one of those like universal constants that you can't really beat. Like nature, there is Mother Nature, and that's, you can control nature to a point, but you can't become the master of nature. You can control time to a point. You can go backwards and forwards in time, possibly, but you can't like manipulate the streams of time any way you choose.
It also really depends, as you said, with the streams of time, like the sort of like the butterfly sort of effect, the chaos theory sort of system, where it's like, oh, I go back in time and I sort all of this stuff out, and now none of this stuff will ever happen. Like the whole conundrum of, people saying, oh, I go back in time and I kill this dictator and then there's no more war. Well, what if someone even worse rises to power? Or what if the war was required to harden up people's thoughts against another war later? And because of that, a new war springs up, because there's a new person from another country who believes, yeah, now that they're going, let's hit harder. Let's blame the country, not the leader. And it's exactly that sort of concept.
I would say probably the best form of the butterfly effect in action would be Ray Bradbury's A Sound of Thunder. Because in it, they use this time traveling service called a time travel safari to go back in time for people to hunt dinosaurs.
Oh, I've heard of this one. I've actually heard of this one.
But they only hunt dinosaurs like at the point, like they only shoot them like moments before they're going to die anyway because of natural causes, and they have to follow this line. They're only allowed in this hard light line They can't go out. They can't touch anything else but the dinosaur.
I've just realised
And
we're
one
now
of these
going
people-
into we're now going into time travel when
Can,
we're...
let me finish the story first, just so people understand what I'm talking about for this butterfly effect.
I
In
mean,
that one,
go on then. We are sort of almost running
it'll be
into
done very quickly.
Go on then.
I'll speed through it. Pretty much, one of the guys
Hey.
gets scared and gets off the path, and then they shoot the dinosaur. But when they go back forward in time, they realize that words are spelled differently now. Like time is spelled Tyme, and you is spelled Yoo. And the person that has won the presidency has changed drastically to this person you wouldn't want, and they don't actually understand why. And then he realizes on the boot is a dead butterfly. So that single dead butterfly has caused somehow this chaotic effect of words being different. The entire future has changed because of this singular, seemingly, not useless, but minute detail being changed. This butterfly died in 3 million years ago, and this happened for. I think that's a better version of the chaos effect as opposed to.
I think it's also why a lot of people really like time travel. Like, again, like, I don't want to continue on time travel, but I will just say one thing about time travel and then move on, which is, like with speedsters, their insane power is, you know what it's like? It's like in Call of Cthulhu or even any other type of sort of world like H.P. Lovecraft. You are so tiny and insignificant. With a speedster, they make you feel insignificant because it's like, yeah, how fast can an average human run? Oh, okay, how fast do most usual species run? How fast would you need to run on water, etc., etc.? It's like the sheer speed and size of the world to them when you can travel at hundreds of miles, thousands of miles, millions of miles per hour. At that point, it's just like, yeah, at this point, they are we are so beneath them, and they're so beyond us, that it's kind of like that whole we are so small in comparison, even though that they look like us, they seem almost like gods among men. And hence why, Mercury from Rome, the Roman things. The Pantheons, there we go. And also the same with Hermes, because I mean Hermes was seen as a speedster. Didn't his wings also allow him to fly as well?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
The fuse
Yeah.
that he had with the wings.
And it's
on
like-
them,
I mean, he did have various other
he's called-
properties besides his messengers, but
He's called like the messenger of the gods, but technically he's considered like either a god or a demigod himself.
he is. Yeah, he's the son of Zeus, and I always forget her name. I think it was his first wife,
But
the one that he ate.
yeah, I can't remember. But however,
I can't remember.
The point that I'm
Sorry.
bringing it back around is speedsters make us feel so small. But then when you look at like the Flash of time travel, like it's the whole concept of like time travel becomes that moment of like, wow, we are actually much more significant than we think. Because again, if a small butterfly can change that, what would happen if you changed a person's life? Like you just literally gave them a pencil that broke and then therefore made them fail a test, and therefore they became someone who was just like immediately never trusting anyone ever again. But then because of that, they then eventually become a hardened person, eventually going into like the military, and eventually becoming someone who doesn't trust anyone, but then becomes such a devout leader that they eventually start wars that ends the world. And it's this whole thing of like, yeah, what if one thing changes the entire correspondence as to how their world works? But like that's the kind of thing, like one butterfly can change the world, one man could rule it. It's the whole concept of like whatever could work, or like again, like it was the concept of like in what was it, Men in Black 3, like the whole thing of if
Yeah.
she hadn't have had one more glass of wine, he would have been a girl, because they would have actually had intercourse another night. And so it was the whole thing of like, yeah, he wouldn't have been born. And it's this whole thing of like, that's a really cool concept. And that's one of the things that I like about Species, is that like they bring it back around, like, yeah, we are they are the most biggest things in the universe. And then it's like, yeah, they can mess with and affect time, but technically everything's a part of the flow of time. But yeah, I mean that's sort of going into it. I guess my question was going to be for technically all of you, which is you know, like do you think that do you think that speedsters are sort of like an important role in sort of like powers? Like, you know, say for instance you have a team of people who have powers. Do you think that a person who has super speed or a heightened capability of movement is sort of either necessary or at least is kind of needed for the dynamic? So that's kind of a question for all of you to answer, I guess.
I think definitely. I mean, it's like, it's like the big three. You've got to have super strength. You've got to have like super mind capabilities on a team, and you got to have like super speed. You have to have someone that has capability of going really fast and outrunning people, at least just to even get to the danger, you know, or to just like, you know, run past a danger. You know, like it's sort of, you know, I can't really conceptualize it. It's like it is like kind of working in a game. Like everyone brings skills to the table, and you know, speed is just one of the staples. Though whether you know whether you know I like it as a power or not, it's like yeah, you got to have super speed, you know, on the team because you know that's always going to be useful.
What do you think, Alfie?
I think, yeah, it's absolutely one of the staples that you can have on any team. I actually think, although it is by no means, in my opinion, a good film, Zack Snyder's Justice League film, where there's that one bit in it where basically like the Flash in the sort of cinematic DC universe is shown to be not a fighter in any way, shape, or form, which is very much like true to the character, I think, at least at the beginning. So he just kind of like slows himself down slightly before he hits someone and then pushes them, essentially. And there's the bit where they're in that they're in a fight with a lot of these like weird bug creatures, and he's kind of paralyzed with fear, and Batman says to him, just go in there and save one. And you just see Flash kind of like zoom into the other room, grab one person and bring them out. And then while everyone else is fighting, he is just running back and forth into the room at like breakneck speed, picking people up and bringing them out of the danger. So I think that, yeah, that's a really important role in kind of any team, to have someone who he's such a versatile support character, I think. And I think someone with speed physiology can easily be that, as well as being a striker if they really like want to be like heading up the combat,
Yeah.
or even be like recon. But I think like having a really good support character who can run around being almost like a medic could be really useful to any team.
And Sam, what about you?
I'm going to be, as is often usual, I'm going to be the contradictory one and say I don't think it's necessary, speedsters. I mean, they're good, but I don't think they're the ones that are needed the most. Because there have been many groups, right? Superhero groups that don't actually require speedsters and have done just as well, if not as well. Probably more well, actually, because then when you have speedsters, you're always going to have someone that is... It's kind of like the good versus bad. There's always going to be a bad speedster to fight a good speedster.
Yeah.
Whereas if you don't have a speedster in the group, you very rarely do you worry about fighting a speedster.
I mean, that is...
It's just one of those weird kind of concepts. That there's always a yin and a yang. There's always a good version and a bad version.
I think that's the problem with certain tropes in writing, which we will actually get to in another episode. Which is what was it? Basically, always having a nemesis, like always having an opposite, and always having a sort of a, I guess you could say like a sort of like a weakness or power grind, where it's similar to like power creeping, where like, oh, there's always a person that's slightly more powerful, so they have to get more powerful. It's like, oh, this guy has super strength, so we need someone on the opposite team who can fight him, who can go toe to toe with him with super strength. It's like, yeah, I guess you could. I guess that's one of the reasons why I like a lot of Flash's villains. Not all of them are speedsters. Some of the speedsters are some of the most interesting, but actually one of my favorite villains that isn't a speedster of his is actually, weirdly enough, I know that a lot of people like Leonard Snart, and I think Leonard Snart, aka Captain Cold, is really good. But I think
that's what I was thinking of.
He works too much to his weakness, and in all honesty, I feel like the character that is the most interesting to me is either the Thinker or Gorilla Grodd. Two characters that actually have good intelligence, but The reason why Gorilla Grodd loses this one is because in the most recent comics he gains the Speed Force, so he immediately loses and disqualifies. So yeah, no, I think that like, you know, why lower yourself? Why, you know, I want the power of your powers? It's like, no, because now you're just the same as everyone else.
And that's what made Gorilla Grodd good. It's like he was his own. I mean, he's literally a giant sentient gorilla with super intelligence. It's
and
like
telepathy.
and telepathy. It's like, you know. I mean, first of all, that is a good way to come back to Speedsters because again, it's like we talked about with telepathy. It's going straight for it. It doesn't matter how fast you are. You know, if you're getting hit by telekinetic brainwashing, or you know, just any kind of messing with your mind, you know, it's not going to be a good time for you. You're not going to be able to block it or combat it easily, and you definitely can't combat it with your Speed Force. But you know, so he didn't need the Speed Force. That's so annoying. I'm sorry.
It's because
it makes
that,
me so mad.
It's because that counterintuitive to what you actually just said. Some species actually are resistant or immune to telepathy, depending on like the levels of it. Because at one point, the reason why Gorilla Grodd, I think, gets the Speed Force, or at least a certain amount of it, is because that he needs it so that he can then brainwash Speedsters. Because after a while, Speedsters' brains just go so fast that he can't actually do that. And it's like, okay, I guess that makes sense, but still, you could have just had it where they're just not resistant to it, I guess. But
or something a bit more creative.
Before we go into the last bit of the podcast, I will just say, I've just now put on the screen Celerity, one of the villains in one of the modules for the Super Society, one of the modules for the Animite Tales that will be coming out at some point. Celerity is a speedster who does actually wear a large suit of power armor, and they are quite a difficult fight. They're kind of like a before boss. They're kind of like a mini boss, and they are actually quite tough. However, after my third test session, which was the Super Society that you did, Alex, I definitely know that a particular thing in the module is not happening, because at one point they go out of their armor to sort of taunt someone, and it was like, yeah, they got wiped out in one hit. So
well, it's mainly the thing that are, you know, really OP, you know, player character just basically got the drop on them essentially. Like they just like it was literally Celerity's fault that they got mulched. Like they got out of their armor, they were taunting them, going, "Ha, you know, take your best shot." Poof, you know, instant power. Yeah, don't do that. If she just stayed in the armor and did her powers, you know, like normal, I think it would have been so much more tougher. I'm not sure if we could have even won that fight. But it's like, because she was cocky and you know, didn't expect, you know, to be mulched instantly.
It really goes on to the whole thing though, as to why you said like some of them have cocky things. Like Bill and I were talking about this, like why how some of them have cocky personalities and stuff. It's because that okay, imagine you have the ability to move at multiple hundreds or thousands of miles per hour, and everything is practically standing still. Nothing is touching you. If you move faster than the fastest projectile a thing can shoot at, you are now the god of this world. But the second that you slow down, or the second that someone does land a hit on you moving at that speed, haha, goodbye body. Because it's like, you are just technically, although you're faster, some species do have a higher durability, like Quicksilver, because of his body is mutated so that he can physically move that fast. Or with speedsters using the Speed Force, their body actually generates a certain amount of kinetic energy around themselves, so that whilst they're moving, they can actually be quite durable. But the second that they stand still, or even the second that they fight someone that is strong enough to actually harm them, it then becomes the problem of like, oh yeah, I'm literally just moving at 100,000 miles per hour into a fist that can destroy a building, and all this momentum is being slam into the solar plexus, and I just get turned into red mist. Like, it just, yeah, that's the thing. Speedsters are cocky, they have earned it, but that is also their biggest downfall almost always. Which is fair enough, I guess you could say. So the last thing, which is the final segment, which is, can it be? Is it in? And does it work in Animite Tales?
Yes, and yes.
I concur.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I don't think I think like well that's the thing. I've only had like I don't even want to say that I had experience fighting a speedster because it wasn't that much of a fight really when Don got involved. But
Hi, bye.
so I think I would like to try a bit more of speedster, in order to again, it's not my favorite power, so it's never I've kind of overlooked it
Yeah,
in
which
many
makes
ways, and
sense.
I probably
Everyone
shouldn't.
has their own personal tastes. Like
Mm.
that's kind of the whole point of this podcast. We're talking about tropes and powers at the moment, and some of them are really good, some of them are really meh, some of them all of the ones that we've talked about, I think some people could go, yeah, super strength is really boring, or yeah, I guess super charisma is kind of interesting, and it's like, yeah, telepathy, meh. I mean, who cares about what you want to hear about another person's mind? Brainwashing, eh. And it's like, the same with speedsters. It's like, oh, that's so cool to move really fast, I guess. But it's like, again, put them in the right light, like how I constantly glorify almost every power
Yes,
that
you
we've
do.
talked about. Every power is so good, and I have such a passion for tropes and stuff like that I love the concept of how they can be utilized. Like, even if you can only move 100 miles per hour, that is more than enough for
Oh,
you
yeah.
to do the
I'll
things.
beat pretty much everyone.
Because
You would need the stamina though.
Yeah.
say for instance you actually have the ability to at least run 100 miles per hour, and your ability is only to run for 1 hour, or even your ability is only to be able to run for like maybe 5 minutes. That's still a good amount of time. Because I mean, okay, imagine like someone says to you like, oh, by the way, you have the ability to run for 100 miles per hour, but you need to take about like a 20-minute break in between 100 miles. Cool, in 1 hour I can get to the other side of like a county, a city, a country, depending on its size. Like,
You could cross
that's
the
so
channel if you could like speed across water,
good. Exactly.
technically.
I don't think you can run that far. I don't think 100 miles per hour is fast enough for you to run across water for a long period of time, but it would at least be a good couple of steps, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it definitely would. It'd still put you, as long as you could finish a fight in like 5 minutes, then you'd win pretty much every fight that you're in.
Yeah.
So in 5 turns, could you beat someone?
Yeah.
Possibility.
Oh, also,
I don't know, Legion. I don't know if anyone actually could do it, Legion. But if anyone could do it, Legion, I think that they would be very powerful and almost unfair, Legion. But who knows?
5 turns? You mean one?
Yeah, exactly, Legion.
I need 1 minute. That's all I need. And also, Legion can kill people in 1 minute as well.
I think Zinzarina has super dexterity, super strength, super constitution. I think Zinzarina has beaten people in 2 turns, so less than 5.
Well, she does have the great
Oh, yeah.
ability of plus 10 damage.
Plus,
Actually, plus 14, I should say.
it's like plus 14 to like most attacks and stuff like that. It's
well, yeah,
insane.
that's the thing, because I guess that's the thing with the system as well, is that the thing that I find most, powerful, strangely consistently, is not actually the powers themselves, but the trades, like from martial arts, like using it in combination with powers. Like,
That's
I mean, yeah, that because like with martial, the reason why you have all of those additions, Sam, is because you've got like all these levels of martial arts.
That
I
is
mean, I
true,
should
yes.
say
normal,
it's not
really.
necessarily, because I did have another power which is yet to be told in this show. Stacking.
Oh, right.
That's why I was
Well,
allowed
to hit-
10
Yes, absolutely.
plus levels of.
To hit, you're absolutely right. To hit someone, you have a high modifier. But what Alex you're trying to say is to actually add that extra 10 or 14 points of damage. It's based off of your dex and super dex or strength and super strength modifier because of the martial arts trades, which yeah, we don't really talk about that much at the moment. But yes, in Animite Tales you can actually have different trades. Along with stats, you can have like a particular trade, like say for instance, my character's a carpenter, my character's a tech builder, my character is weirdly enough a cab driver. It's like these different trades can help you, but it's like martial arts. Once you get to a certain point, you can actually add modifiers to damage. You can do all special abilities. You can have higher amounts of damage, or you can do special, nifty little utility tricks and fighting stances and combat prowess. And those on top of superpowers are incredible, like super stat based ones. Cool. Martial arts with super dexterity. Now I am practically unbeatable. Or, super strength with just like a brawler, like I am like a street fighter, but I now have the ability to like just be able to lift like multiple hundreds of tons and now these fists and these kicks are now going to be able to actually do so much more damage. And that's one of the things that I think you're absolutely right though with like a trade, because you brought it up earlier, Sam, with one of the questions, is if you have doctoring or if you have any kind of trade at all with super speed, you could just do it instantly. It's like, oh no, this will take 4 hours for you to make this this item. Give me 4 minutes. And yeah, it is that really cool thing of like
Really handy.
get the right trade and get the right powers, and you can basically do almost anything much more effectively.
If a character like Solanius, who's is a forging specialist, had both his original power and speedster physiology, he can literally make everyone's weapons and armor and repair everything pretty much instantaneously
within a couple of minutes. Although I guess the problem would obviously be like smelting.
Yeah,
It's like that would be the only problem. Although there's always a way around stuff like that. You know, like it would really depend, lore wise and or mechanic wise. Oh no, he's disappeared.
We've lost him. He's gone. Man down.
Man down.
I
Man
guess
down.
if you could like vibrate a piece of metal in your hands, kind of like Bear Grylls trying to start a bushfire, like with your speedster physiology, that could be an SPMA that you could do.
That's
You
good.
attribute just to create friction heat in your own hands.
So I guess the only thing that I will say then before we end is hey, he's back.
Just in time.
Is pretty much when it comes to speedster physiology in Anime Tales, the way that it works is you have obviously your usual abilities. You have a passive healing ability that's like your metabolism and your healing rate is a little faster, so you actually just have a passive capability of healing. Whenever you're using super speed, it increases your movement speed by a certain amount of times. Like it just multiplies it like 2 times, 10 times, whatever. And then outside of combat, that then increases further in kilometers per hour. And the reason why we use kilometers is because in Anime Tales we actually use meters, and it's above most reasons. It's because in there he goes again. Is because in Anime Tales and in most situations of superpowers, you have this incredible feeling of like when using powers, when using magic, when using anything. Isn't it incredible to think of the massive capability? Like, yeah, fair enough. Feet, like 100,000 feet. That's not really. That is a really big number. But compared to meters, the meters, like if you were to have 100,000 meters, that's much more than 100,000 feet. And for that reason, it's like, yeah, kilometers and meters, they're all kind of tricky. But to be honest, the amount of feet that are in a mile is not exact number, and just to have it like, oh yeah, a single kilometer is like 1,000 meters, etc., etc. So it's like at least then you've got a consistent tone and a consistent number for each particular measurement. But it's also just the factor of like, oh, if a being can fly 30 meters off of the ground, that is much better than 30 feet off of the ground, and it's just like that is an insane capability. Like, oh, I can shoot a at a distance of 1 kilometer. That is quite impressive versus like 1,000 feet. Personally, I think it's just kind of an interesting thing for speedsters to be able to move that fast. For them to do so, which is one of the reasons why I love them so much. But yeah, in the game, that's basically it. Like, you move faster. Certain perks allow you to do different things, like create after images, create the ability to like move and react to like being shot by bullets or projectiles, the ability to phase through objects by vibrating, all these different things. You have all of these different abilities and techniques, to the point of which you can do all sorts of weird and wacky things for them. So before I end this podcast, has anyone got any last things that they wanted to say about speedster physiology or anything about the podcast in general?
I think you might have sold me a little bit on speedster physiology. I might have a go at it.
I think what you mean is I wore you down.
No, yeah, entirely.
What about you, Alfie? Oh no, I think he's gone as well.
Sorry about
Alfie.
No, don't worry.
Yeah, for some reason, we got new internet today. For some reason, my phone for all that time it was working well, and then it just stopped.
Oh no. Oh, Alfie, I think he's back.
Yeah, nice, I'm back. I was just talking there to myself. Yeah, in terms of like speedster physiology, I think that'd be it. It'll be a really good augment to have, I think, to combine it with other abilities. I still feel like on its own, it's very much. I class it in the same sort of class as I would do for super strength and hyper agility and things like that. So it's kind of like it's just a extension of one skill that you kind of already have. So I feel like if you were to augment it with, as you say, trades, or to augment it with other abilities, other powers, then it will really shine.
It's a means to an end or an additional ability, basically, in your eyes.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's always it's good to have something, I don't know, like super speed and maybe like telekinesis or something, because then you could like run at the speed of light, but then pick up and carry absolutely everything. Or you have the gravitational upgrade, so you can basically run at the speed of light and carry this like basically an entire city behind you at the speed of light, and just basically obliterate a whole a whole country if you want to. Right. Or do something maybe less destructive, but like that's the first thing that springs.
No, it's too late now. Everyone's going to be doing it. Everyone's now going to be called Planet Busters, where they're all just going to be chaining cities, lifting them up using gravity manipulation, and flinging them at other moons, planets, and etc. etc.
Yeet.
It's so cool to have something like structure coupled with that, because then you could literally make an entire continent, like a giant sort of like mech suit, like a concrete mech suit, and just fight people with that. So cool.
Yeah, I think, Sam, is there any last things that you want to add to speedster physiology or speedsters in general?
Say anything. Well, I suppose I do have to the greatest speedster of all time, of course, from back in the day in the 40s and 50s, back during the war era. I had to mention that, Joe, I'm afraid. If I didn't, I would be annoyed.
Oh, yes. The Wizard, I believe his name is.
Yes. The Wizard, the greatest.
Oh, mate.
Oh,
If I
the
can get
Wizard.
a will do so.
One absolute character.
Just leaves the yellow trail behind him.
But
The ability to toxify any
Yeah,
stone.
it actually looks like what the Flash probably stole from.
it might be, to be fair, because way back in the day, like, comics actually used to take a lot of different inspirations for other things. I mean, to be honest, I think they also have the Accelerated Man. Like, I'm pretty sure the Accelerated Man was supposed to be some kind of like wartime character, like from an alternate universe of DC. It's like an alternate world, basically. But yeah, like the Accelerated Man is just sort of like wearing a wartime sort of pilot's costume, I think. Oh, here's the Wizard. Yes,
Hey.
yeah.
Pretty much, he looks like Barry Allen's The Flash.
It really is.
He's from
like,
Marvel, isn't he? Yeah.
And he is the Marvel version. Pretty much, I think it was before the actual Jay Garrick's Flash.
although in fairness, though, it might be just copying a bit from Captain America, because you look behind him and it's got the same little, wings on him a little bit. So it could be
Kinda.
stealing from everyone.
Rocket Team with him during the war when they fought fought all the baddies back in the day, like the Red Skull and punching Hitler in the face, as you do.
Ah, the classics.
Ah, yes, the classics. See, kids, your superheroes aren't actually superheroes until they've actually punched Hitler in the face.
And most have actually, in some form or fashion.
Yeah, actually.
They brought
It's
Hitler
like
back
that.
to life in the form of the Red Skull, so you can punch him another time. So
Absolutely.
it's
Then, before I do this, I do have to mention Hitler is actually a villain in the Marvel universe in like the 80s. Hate Monger, I think was his name. And he had a gun that actually projected like raw hate as a weapon.
Makes sense, I guess. Actually, that actually brings me on to the last thing. So obviously, we've talked a lot about time travel. We've talked a lot about speed. We've talked a lot about manifesting thought and hate. But next week, we'll be talking about positives, such as the positives that tabletop RPGs or role-play games can actually have on people psychologically, or at least mentally and emotionally. So if you'd like to stick tuned for that one, we'll have our guest Des jumping in, helping us with that. And basically, if anyone's actually interested in that, stay tuned for that one. Stick around. And the only other thing that I usually obviously say at the end of these is, if you have any questions or any particular things that you wanted to talk about to do with Speedsters, if you feel like we've missed anything, of course, feel free to comment and message us on our YouTube channel or even on our Patreon. Stick around and you might actually be able to find out some more bits and pieces for that. And the only thing I have to say is, after the next week's, we'll actually be jumping into tropes. And the trope that I have is prototypes. Why are they always seen as the best version?
Oh, this.
I'm going into this one
this.
straight away. So a trope to do with prototypes in in fiction. But anyway, guys, thanks again for joining me along our journey to figuring out what exactly makes a good speedster, or even just me talking about speedsters. So thank you very much.
Dankeschön.
Bye.
Bye bye.
And as always, guys, have a wonderful day and keep sane.
Oh boy,
Yeah,
that's a tall order there.
Absolutely.
It's a life.
But all I will say is thank you for sticking around. This has been Joe from the Betartians, telling you another lovely story and a message about superpowers, along with his astute patrons and good friends along this journey. So thank you very much, guys, and goodbye.